According to reports, Prince Harry is feeling more isolated than ever. Maybe he should learn how to make sourdough. Reports are circulating that Prince Harry has been telling friends his life hasn't unfolded the way he'd hoped, competing with Meghan Markle's growing business. Before we dive in, if you keep coming back here for royal commentary you won't hear anywhere else, make sure you subscribe to Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered. It's the best way to stay connected, and it tells the algorithm you value thoughtful royal coverage. You're always welcome here. We love you. RadarOnline is reporting that Prince Harry has been confiding in friends that life hasn't turned out the way he envisioned, as Meghan Markle's business ventures continue to expand. Their latest article states, while proud of her success, Harry reportedly feels sidelined as she works long hours, often at the expense of their time together. I'm going to go ahead and interrupt right here and say I know some of you are already calling BS in the comments or in the live chat, and you're going to say, what does she do? I'll interject again to say that is a claim we've heard from both The Hollywood Reporter, perhaps Vanity Fair, but definitely The Hollywood Reporter, I believe, as well as Valentine Lowe's original Bully Report piece about how she was emailing people at 5 a.m. So it is important to note that that is something we've heard about her in the past, that she starts her day before sunrise. The quote says, throws herself into an endless workload and won't hand things over. Her expectations are so demanding that it leaves everyone on edge, says the report. That also sounds incredibly familiar. While Harry remains committed to the Invictus Games and his charitable projects, although they are few and far between these days, he's lost Senabale. What's going on with the African Parks charity scandal? What's going on with the African Parks drama? Prince Harry, though, having a pretty important position in the charity, seems to avoid that. Where was Prince Harry, aside from the random he doesn't like lobster joke? Like, where was your man? John Legend was locked in a kitchen cabinet. Where was Prince Harry? Inquiring minds want to know. He feels pushed to the sidelines, and most evenings he's left with nothing to do while she's tied up on calls or dealing with brand matters. Hello, Meghan. The fruit spread is loose. What do we do about the emergency loose fruit spread? The slimy jam, as we call it with Maureen Callahan. They once treated time together as sacred, but now Harry jokes that he practically has to book a slot with his wife. He makes light of it, but deep down, it bothers him. Harry has been pressing Meghan to step back and take a real break so they can spend quality time together, a source said. He understands how much her business matters to her, but he feels their marriage is slipping into second place.
Prince Harry didn't just leave the royal family. He traded castles and coronations for podcast flops, jam jars, and the slow, silent realization that he might have walked straight into a different kind of cage. According to multiple reports, Harry has been confiding in close friends. The words he's using, chilling in their simplicity. This isn't the life I imagined I was choosing. And suddenly, the carefully crafted image of a couple united in purpose starts to crack. Because behind the staged photographs, the business launches, and the branded optimism, there's a man quietly unraveling. A man who stepped away from one machine, only to be consumed by another. RadarOnline was the first to sound the alarm. In their report, they claim Harry feels sidelined as Meghan Markle's business empire grows louder, faster, and perhaps most painfully, farther away from him. She starts her day before sunrise, dives headfirst into an endless workload, and refuses to delegate. While he, the once rebellious royal, finds himself pacing the empty hallways of a Montecito mansion, wondering what role he plays now, if any. Some call it jealousy, others say it's regret. But one thing is clear, Harry expected a new kind of freedom. What he got instead was distance. Distance from the family he left behind. Distance from the woman he thought he'd share everything with. And distance from the man he thought he was becoming. But this wasn't just about business. It wasn't just about jam. And it definitely wasn't just about long work hours. Because what came next would push that distance even further and reveal cracks in the fairy tale that no one, especially Harry, was prepared to face. If you listen to the headlines, Meghan Markle is a woman who never sleeps. Sunrise emails, back-to-back calls, and branding meetings that stretch into the night. The narrative paints her as a tireless entrepreneur, the driving force behind every photo shoot, pitch deck, and product launch. But when you look closer, past the press releases and recycled talking points, you start to see the cracks because something doesn't add up. RadarOnline quoted a source saying, Meghan throws herself into an endless workload and won't hand things over. Her expectations? Described as so demanding that it leaves everyone on edge. The image is clear. Meghan in control. Meghan all in. Meghan doing it all herself. But then, why do so many things seem unfinished? Let's start with the basics. Her new lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard, promised artisanal elegance, but couldn't even swap out the stock images. Product listings went live with insert image here placeholders, mock-ups of t-shirt shapes, template tags, and in one embarrassing case, a refund fiasco where customers paid for items that didn't exist. She collected names, emails, credit card numbers, and then sent out the dreaded, "Sorry, it's not available" message. That's not ambition, that's chaos. And it's not the first time. Spotify terminated its deal with Harry and Meghan, reportedly because the couple wasn't producing enough content. One executive went so far as to call them fuck-hitting grifters off the record. That's not exactly the legacy you want when you're supposedly working nonstop. So where's the disconnect? Meghan says she's busy. She projects productivity. But the actual results? They feel thin, rushed, and inconsistent. A flurry of announcements followed by silence. Launches with no follow-through. Public statements that collapse under scrutiny. At some point, you have to ask, is Meghan really working harder than ever? Or is this just part of the brand narrative? Because let's not forget, "I work so hard" has become one of her go-to phrases. She told it to Jamie Kern-Lima. She's repeated it in interviews subtly, or not so subtly, pushing the idea that every late night and every sacrifice is for a greater vision. But when we peel back the curtain, what we see isn't a thriving empire. It's a chaotic startup with too many empty promises, too few finished projects, and one very sidelined husband wondering where he fits in. And here's the kicker. If Meghan is as involved in every detail as her team claims, then she's also responsible for every failure, every trademark oversight, every marketing misstep, every loose fruit spreads and causes a refund disaster. You can't claim the glory without taking the blame, but that might be exactly the problem. Because the more Meghan holds on to everything, the less room there is for Harry. And as her empire expands, his role shrinks. And what does that do to their marriage? Well, that's where things start to get uncomfortable. Because the next piece of this puzzle might explain why Harry feels less like a husband and more like a ghost in his own home. Once upon a time, Harry and Meghan were inseparable. They were the royal rebels, the duo who walked hand in hand through palace gates and straight into global headlines. But somewhere between Spotify cancellations, fruit spread fiascos, and the American Riviera Orchard rebrand, Prince Harry disappeared. Not literally, of course. He's still in Montecito, still showing up to the occasional charity event, still smiling in the background when needed. But in Meghan's new empire, he's gone, visibly, audibly, and painfully missing. Let's talk about With Love, Meghan, the heavily promoted lifestyle content that was supposed to reintroduce Meghan to the world. Not as a duchess, but as a brand, a movement, a woman of vision. But for all the ambient music, soft focus shots, and monologues about intention and lavender-infused dish soap, there was one glaring omission: Prince Harry. Aside from a single line, some offhand joke about how he doesn't like lobster, he's not mentioned, not shown, not involved. John Legend somehow makes it into the episode, allegedly locked in a kitchen cabinet for comedic effect. But Harry? Crickets. That absence speaks volumes. This wasn't just a soft launch of jam, it was a hard launch of independence. Meghan wasn't just promoting a product. She was promoting herself, unattached, uninterrupted, unburdened, and it didn't go unnoticed. Fans asked, "Where's Harry?" Critics muttered, "Is he even part of this world anymore?" And perhaps most tellingly, Harry didn't seem to mind. Or maybe he's just learned to keep quiet. Sources say he's still committed to the Invictus Games, to Wellchild, to whatever's left of his charitable work. But beyond that, he's a man without a project, a title, or a storyline. In Meghan's carefully curated brand narrative, he's been relegated to the shadows. No business decisions, no joint interviews, not even a cameo in the product launches. And that silence isn't accidental. In the media, silence is editorial. Silence is a statement. Some insiders have suggested that Meghan no longer includes Harry the way she once did, that she's taken full creative control of their public life, and he's just along for the ride. A reluctant passenger in a luxury SUV, he doesn't even know the destination. Even in private, the tension shows. One friend reportedly revealed that Harry has to book a slot just to get time with his wife. A joke, maybe, but also a confession, because once upon a time, they treated their time together as sacred. Now, it's a calendar entry sandwiched between business calls and brand deals. So where is Harry in Meghan's empire? He's in the margins. He's in the empty rooms. He's watching it all happen from a distance. And maybe, just maybe, he's realizing that the woman who once pulled him out of the monarchy is now building a new one without him. But Meghan's not just building an empire, she's setting the rules. And what happens when Harry tries to challenge them? Well, that's when things get even more one-sided. If anyone needed proof that Meghan Markle's empire is veering into absurdist theater, with love, Meghan delivered it. With jam jars, clingy fruit spread, and a lobster joke that somehow managed to say more about her marriage than any formal interview ever could. Let's break it down. The episode's vibe was clear from the start. Soft glow lighting, neutral tones. Meghan floating through a kitchen like she's auditioning for a Nancy Meyers film. But without the charm, the credibility, or frankly, the plot. In the midst of it all, we're treated to a throwaway comment. Harry doesn't like lobster. That's it. No further elaboration. Just that dry, almost sterile insertion of the man she supposedly built an entire post-royal life with. And then, silence. Where was Harry? Not in the kitchen, not in the narrative, not in the brand. The one person who walked away from his entire royal identity for her, completely reduced to a seafood punchline. But let's not pretend this was just an editing choice. This was a strategy. Meghan's presentation was built on minimalism, control, and isolation, on screen and off. The mise-en-scène screamed curated perfection, but when you peel it back, things got weird, fast. Viewers noticed the awkward pacing, the fake product shots, the bizarre sense that everything was being filmed for a trailer to something that didn't exist. And then came the jam. Oh, the jam. A leaked photo of American Riviera Orchard's fruit spread revealed an unfortunate truth. The product had leaked. Literally, jam had seeped out, staining the packaging and turning Meghan's luxury lifestyle image into a meme overnight. The internet dubbed it the slimy jam incident. It wasn't just a manufacturing mistake, it was symbolic. Because that jar wasn't just full of fruit, it was full of everything Meghan has been trying to contain. The chaos, the branding over substance, the pressure to prove herself. But the jam broke free, just like the narrative. And here's where it gets deliciously ironic. Meghan, the perfectionist who starts her day before sunrise, didn't catch it. The woman who won't delegate, who's reportedly so controlling that she leaves staff on edge, missed the most basic quality control. Meanwhile, Harry, he's watching this unfold from the sidelines, probably wondering if this was the dream they left England for. A life of viral mishaps, crumbling product launches, and jokes that land like a cold fish. Even John Legend, apparently locked in a kitchen cabinet for reasons no one can explain, made more of an impact in the show than Prince Harry himself. A Grammy-winning musician becomes a punchline in Meghan's kitchen. A royal prince becomes invisible. Meghan is now surrounded by props, celebrity cameos, jam jars, aesthetic flat lays, but her husband, nowhere in sight. And the fans noticed. The comment sections lit up. Where's Harry? Why is he not part of this? This feels like Meghan playing house, alone. Even the most loyal supporters couldn't deny the eerie absence, because the joke didn't just fall flat. It collapsed under the weight of what it accidentally revealed. A man out of the picture, a woman consumed by her own reflection, and a brand that's starting to look more like a performance with no supporting cast. But what if that wasn't an accident? What if Meghan has no intention of making Harry part of this brand at all? What if the exclusion is the plan, and he's just now realizing it? Because the deeper you go into the empire she's building, the more it looks like Harry was only ever meant to be the launching pad. And now that she's airborne, there's no room left in the cockpit. But if you think that's painful, wait until you see what their sacred marriage time has turned into. Because up next, Prince Harry isn't just sidelined, he's scheduled. They once described their relationship as a fairy tale. Two outsiders finding each other across oceans and royal barriers, escaping tradition for a new kind of freedom, one built on love, equality, and shared purpose. But these days, that purpose seems increasingly one-sided. And the love? Well, it's beginning to feel like a calendar event. Reports now claim that Prince Harry has to book a slot just to spend time with his wife. Let that sink in. The man who gave up his country, his crown, and his credibility for a life with Meghan is now penciled in like a work meeting, maybe 4:15 on Thursday. Tentative, subject to cancellation if jam emergencies arise. Of course, the source said he makes light of it, that he jokes about having to schedule time with her. But underneath that awkward British humor is something much more revealing. He's not joking, he's hurting, and it's starting to show. The same reports say Harry misses the simple, everyday moments they used to share. Mornings together, walks, talking without screens or staff around. But now, Meghan starts her day at dawn, firing off emails, hopping on branding calls, juggling design revisions and production delays. And Harry? He's left to fill in the blanks. Those who know the couple say Meghan doesn't include Harry the way she once did. He's not in meetings, not on brand materials, not even consulted on key decisions. At best, he gets an occasional acknowledgement, a nod, a joke about lobster. But the deep partnership, the collaboration that once defined their public image, gone. And we've all seen the signs. Remember with Love, Meghan Season 2? If you sat through that high-gloss PR puff piece, you probably noticed the emotional vacancy. Meghan, center stage. Meghan is making jam. Meghan, embracing minimalist domestic goddess energy. But Harry, completely missing. Not a hug, not a moment, not even a background cameo. At one point, it felt like even the fruit preserves got more screen time than he did. Friends say the shift is subtle but undeniable. The time they once guarded fiercely as sacred is now swallowed by conference calls and brand launches. Meghan's empire doesn't pause. Not even for the man who helped her build it. Harry, for his part, is trying to keep up. But his projects, Invictus Games, Wellchild, the African Park Silence, are few and far between. And when the cameras aren't rolling, he's reportedly left wandering the house with little to do. To be clear, this isn't about laziness. It's about disconnection. This is a man who once flew helicopters in war zones, shook hands with world leaders, and spearheaded major charitable campaigns. Now he's reportedly joking about being a ghost in his own marriage. That's not comedy, that's confession. Even when he tries to initiate reconnection, asking Meghan to take a real break so they can spend time together, insiders say she brushes it off. She's too busy. The business can't wait. There's always another crisis. Another photo shoot, another delay, another excuse. And the more Harry presses, the more distant she becomes. At what point does a marriage stop feeling like a partnership and start feeling like a PR liability? Because Meghan's empire isn't just about selling jam or curating aesthetics. It's about control. And the more she builds, the more it looks like Harry doesn't fit into the blueprint anymore. He thought he'd left one institution for something freer. Instead, he's now stuck in a brand machine that runs on his absence. But the most damning part? Meghan isn't just leaving him out. She may be actively keeping him there. And if Harry's beginning to realize that, then the next chapter in this story could change everything. Because it's not just his place in her brand that's fading. It's his identity, his impact, and the very legacy he thought he was building post-royal life. Prince Harry once envisioned a quiet life. Not lazy, not disengaged, but intentional, grounded. The kind where your mornings aren't dictated by press briefings or tiara protocols, and your evenings end curled up with the people you love, not waiting outside their office while they wrap another Zoom call. But the dream is fading, because what Harry didn't account for was the monster called the brand. Sources close to the Sussexes say the tension is reaching a boiling point. Meghan's days reportedly begin before sunrise, an old reputation revived from her palace days, where she famously fired off emails at 5 a.m. Back then, it was spun as ambition. Now it's something colder. Meghan is reportedly unwilling to hand anything over, micromanaging everything from color palettes to product wording to jam viscosity. And Harry? He's not just watching from the sidelines, he's living inside the silence. One friend described it perfectly. He's up against a business that never switches off. And that's the key. Meghan's world isn't a job. It's a 24/7 machine. One built on aesthetics, controlled messaging, and curated perfection. There are no weekends, no pause buttons, no room for people who need sleep, conversation, or, God forbid, emotional intimacy. So where does that leave Harry? Wandering the hallways of a multi-million-dollar estate, reportedly wondering what comes next. Because it's not that Meghan's success bothers him, at least not on the surface. Insiders insist he's proud of what she's built, but proud doesn't mean fulfilled. And pride doesn't fix loneliness. There's a growing sense, among those close to the couple, that Harry feels obsolete, not useful, not included, not even acknowledged. His role, once central to their joint narrative, has quietly withered into a glorified bystander. He wanted freedom, he got isolation. He wanted purpose, he got placeholder charity appearances. He wanted family, he got a schedule. And it's eating away at him. In private moments, friends say Harry has started to express regret. Not just over the tension, but over how disconnected he feels from the life he thought they were building. He's admitted that it hasn't turned out the way he hoped, that he misses the simple things, that he's tired of feeling like a secondary character in a story that once had his name in the headline. Meanwhile, Meghan is reportedly buried in phone calls, brand rollouts, and reputation management. Even the fruit spread leak fiasco, remember, the jam that literally oozed out of the packaging, became another symbol of how overextended she is. She's juggling too much, failing to delegate, and building a business that's visually perfect, but emotionally hollow. And here's the cruel irony. The harder she works, the more Harry vanishes. This isn't a power couple anymore. It's a one-woman show with a silent husband in the wings, waiting for an invitation that never comes. Some might say it's just a phase, that Meghan is in hustle mode, and Harry needs to be patient. But patience has a limit. And as he continues to drift further from her spotlight, the resentment quietly grows. Because when you're married to someone who can't turn it off, who's always working, always planning, always branding, it starts to feel like you're living with a CEO, not a partner. The moments of connection fade. The laughter gets replaced by launch anxiety. And love turns into logistics. And Harry, for all his flaws and royal baggage, never signed up for that. He wanted a wife, a partner, a team. What he got was a CEO with a jam crisis, and no time left for him. But while the marriage quietly frays behind closed doors, there's another, even more alarming silence echoing from the outside world. Because Harry hasn't just been pushed out of his relationship, he's also been missing from the very causes that once defined him. And the next chapter? It's not about jam. It's about a royal scandal no one expected him to ignore. Once upon a time, Prince Harry was known for more than drama. More than memoirs, more than Meghan, more than Netflix. There was a time when his name meant something in the world of service, of duty, of real-world action. And nowhere was that legacy more present than with African Parks, the conservation charity Harry proudly aligned himself with as president. But lately, the silence has been deafening. Because while Harry's been missing from Meghan's brand, he's also been conspicuously absent from a growing controversy, one involving the very organization he was once proud to represent. A scandal is brewing behind the scenes of African Parks, and Harry's response has been nothing. No statements, no appearances, no defense. Just an eerie void where leadership should have been. Let's rewind. Harry joined African Parks in 2016 and was appointed as its president in 2017. He was passionate, engaged, and hands-on, joining anti-poaching patrols, helping with relocations of endangered species, and raising millions through global awareness campaigns. It was one of the few areas where his commitment felt authentic, raw even. A royal doing the work, not just posing for photos. But in recent months, troubling reports have surfaced. Allegations of mismanagement, questions about where the money's going. Internal leadership disputes have spilled out into public whispers. And amid all this, no word from Harry. Not a single interview. Not a single acknowledgement, and not even a vague Instagram story expressing concern. This is not the Harry we once knew. Even diehard supporters are beginning to ask, is he still involved? Is he stepping down? Is he being silenced? Or does he simply no longer care? And here's where the pattern gets disturbing. It's not just African Parks. Harry's larger charitable presence seems to be shrinking by the day. His once passionate voice for mental health, quiet. His personal support for veterans and soldiers, reduced to sporadic mentions. Even the Invictus Games, his pride and joy, has become less about impact and more about public relations. So what changed? Some say it's the pressure. The demands of brand building, lawsuits, and media firefights have left little room for real-world service. Others argue that Harry's been strategically removed from these platforms, either by his team or by Meghan herself, to focus more on image and less on messy, unpredictable causes that don't fit the curated narrative. But whatever the reason, the damage is clear. Harry is losing the very thing that made him different. The thing that, for a while, earned him respect outside of royal circles. His charitable work wasn't just good PR, it was real, tangible. And now, it's evaporating, ghosted, left to die in silence while he attends exclusive polo matches, and appears in content-free video clips with vague, recycled talking points. And maybe that's what hurts the most. Because once you strip away the palace drama, the Netflix fluff, and the podcast noise, you're left with a man who used to care, who used to fight, who used to show up. Now, he's vanishing from the causes he once championed, without explanation, without grace, and without warning. And yet, while Harry retreats further into the shadows, Meghan continues to push forward, louder, bolder, and increasingly solo. Which begs the question, is Harry falling away from public life on purpose? Or is he being pushed? Because in Meghan's empire, there may not be room for two brands. And as Harry loses his charitable platform, he may be forced to accept a role he never imagined, supporting cast to a woman who never stops performing. But if that's the new reality, it's not just his charity work that's at stake. Because next, we dive into the moment Meghan's empire truly began to crumble, and why Harry may have seen the whole thing coming. If there was ever a moment when the glitter started falling off the Markle brand, it was this. The Spotify scandal didn't just dent Meghan's empire. It exposed the hollow center of a house built on hype, promises, and press releases that never quite matched reality. Let's rewind to 2020. The world was locked down. Celebrities were pivoting. And the Sussexes? They landed a headline-grabbing deal with Spotify, reportedly worth $20 million. Goal was clear. Produce exclusive, powerful, world-changing audio content. Meghan's show Archetypes was supposed to redefine podcasting, a platform for female empowerment, high-profile guests, deep conversations, all the buzzwords. And then, silence. Months went by with nothing. Then a teaser. Then, more silence. When archetypes finally dropped, it barely scratched the surface of its ambitious promises. Meghan's interviews, critics said, felt scripted, sanitized, more like PR exercises than raw storytelling. Ratings dropped, engagement was weak. And then came the final blow. Spotify pulled the plug. But it wasn't just a quiet cancellation. Bill Simmons, a top Spotify exec and the creator of The Ringer, didn't mince words. In a now infamous interview, he referred to Harry and Meghan as effing grifters. That wasn't just a jab, that was a detonation. A public dressing down by a senior executive from the very company that paid them millions. And in that moment, all the glossy magazine spreads, the carefully curated brand language, the slow-motion jam stirring, crumbled. Suddenly, the world wasn't just questioning the Sussexes' output, it was questioning their credibility. Because this wasn't an isolated case. Netflix had reportedly grown cold feet. Meghan's animated project Pearl was scrapped before it even aired. Deals were being announced, then quietly canceled. Trademarks were filed without due diligence. Refunds were issued for unavailable products. And fans started connecting the dots. Was Meghan actually doing the work? Or just selling the idea of it? Harry, meanwhile, was left adrift. The Spotify fallout wasn't just a business failure, it was a reputational one. He wasn't the voice of a cause anymore. He was the co-signature on a collapsing brand. Meghan's empire was built to be sleek, powerful, and polished, but underneath it was all scaffolding and stage lights. Even Archetypes, the show meant to highlight Meghan's intellect and activism, was accused of using ghostwriters and producers to script guest questions. One insider hinted that Meghan rarely showed up during the actual podcast development process. And when Spotify pulled out, they didn't just walk, they ran. The fallout was swift. PR damage control went into overdrive. Meghan pivoted to her next venture, American Riviera Orchard, because nothing says bounce back like fruit spread. But the deeper the cracks became, the more obvious it was. Meghan wasn't building a brand, she was chasing one, lurching from one aesthetic to the next, from royalty to podcasting to jam. And each time, Harry was further from the center. He didn't comment on the Spotify fallout. He didn't defend the project. He didn't appear in the brand's next chapter. Because maybe even he saw it coming. Maybe after years of watching deals fall apart, promises evaporate, and products leak, literally, he knew this was more than a bump in the road. This was the unraveling. And yet, Meghan pushed forward. The cameras rolled. Jars were labeled. Lobster jokes were made. All while Harry stood quietly off screen, watching the empire he helped elevate slowly crumble under the weight of its own ambition. But the most tragic part? He may not have the strength or the platform to stop it anymore. Because what happens when you're no longer a prince, no longer a partner, and no longer part of the brand? What happens when you're just optional? The next chapter is even more brutal. Because behind the PR, behind the brand, behind the fruit jars and scripted podcasts, there's a very real power struggle brewing. And it's not about fame anymore. It's about who stays in control and who gets left behind. They were supposed to be unstoppable. The exiled royals who rewrote the playbook, who went from Buckingham Palace to Beverly Hills boardrooms, from tiaras to tech deals, from tradition to transformation. But somewhere along the way, the fairy tale fractured. Because now, behind the smiles and staged brand launches, the Sussexes aren't operating as a unit. They're operating in opposition. What once looked like a partnership has started to feel like a power struggle. And the more Meghan builds, the more Harry disappears. Insiders say it's no longer a question of when the tension began, but how bad it's gotten. At first, the divide was subtle. Harry is stepping back during branding meetings. Meghan is taking solo calls. But now, according to multiple sources, Meghan is running the show. Not just her own projects, but everything. The tone, the message, the image, even the silence. And Harry? He's no longer part of the decision-making circle. In fact, some insiders go as far as to say that Harry is being strategically phased out. A soft removal, masked as scheduling conflicts and behind-the-scenes roles. But the truth is starker. He's lost his place, not just in the public narrative, but in his own marriage's mission. It didn't start this way. Remember those early days? The Oprah interview, the shared statements, the synchronized speeches about mental health and privacy. Even their Netflix docuseries painted them as perfectly aligned. Us versus them. Love conquers all. We're in this together. But now, Meghan is curating her brand alone. She appears solo. She speaks solo. Her new ventures are branded Meghan Markle, not Harry and Meghan. And the messaging? It's subtle but clear. She is the business. She is the face, the founder, the force. Harry, increasingly, is an accessory. And that dynamic is starting to take its toll. Reports say Harry, the fade is harder. He didn't just leave a royal title. He left a role, a structure, a definition of who he was. And as that spotlight dims, it's not just the press walking away, it's his sense of identity. He once imagined freedom, simplicity, a house filled with love and shared purpose. But what he got was a revolving door of branding calls and a wife too busy to look up from her laptop. And now, he's realizing the unspoken truth. He was never the main character. Meghan's orbit is growing with or without him. The business moves on, the cameras roll, the content posts itself, and Harry, once the spark that ignited the global fascination, is now barely a footnote, a lobster joke, a man watching his own life from the sidelines. That's the tragedy no one wants to say out loud. Because behind the luxury homes, the celebrity guests, the hand-lettered jam jars, and slow-motion drone shots, there's a man quietly wondering, what did I trade everything for? Not just the crown, not just the family, but himself. And maybe that's the cruelest twist of all. That in trying to escape the machine of the monarchy, he walked straight into another one, sleeker, shinier, but just as ruthless. One that never stops. One that doesn't wait for anyone, not even him. So what happens next? Does Harry reclaim his voice? Or does he let the silence speak for him? Does Meghan make room for her husband? Or continue building without looking back? And if their paths really are diverging, will either of them have the courage to say it out loud? Only time will tell. But when the spotlight finally moves on, and it will, we'll see what's left behind. Because the real story doesn't end when the headlines stop. It begins there. What do you think is really happening behind the scenes? Is Harry quietly planning his exit? Or is this just a rocky chapter in their shared journey? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you're tired of the PR spin and want real royal commentary. See you next time.